So, picture this. A king wants to build a palace literally covered in gold and at the same time pay for the most powerful army in all of Europe. How on earth do you afford that? Well, it all came down to a brilliant and pretty ruthless economic plan. We're going to dive into how one king's hunger for power completely reshaped an entire nation's economy. And yeah, this was the exact problem staring King Louis XIV of France right in the face. He had, let's say, very expensive tastes and even more expensive ambitions. He was determined to make France the superstar of Europe. But, being a superstar costs a ton of money. So where was all that cash going to come from? The answer came from an idea called mercantilism. The main belief here was that there's only so much wealth in the world. It was like a giant pizza. If you wanted a bigger slice, that meant someone else had to get a smaller one. Wealth was all about hoarding gold and silver, which was also called bullion. So economics wasn't about creating new wealth, it was a fight to take it from your rivals. And you better believe King Louis was playing to win. All his spending on the incredible Palace of Versailles, plus his constant wars, put a huge strain on France's bank account. He needed a system that would act like a giant vacuum, sucking gold and silver from the rest of the world and dumping it right into his treasury. And here's the thing you gotta understand. This wasn't just about the king wanting to be personally rich. Every single economic decision had two main goals: fill up the treasury and build an unbeatable French military. The logic was simple. A strong economy funds a strong army, and a strong army makes France the most powerful nation. Now, to pull something like this off, the king needed a genius, and he found one. His Minister of Finances, a guy named Jean-Baptiste Colbert. This man was a total workaholic, and he was about to become the master architect of France's whole economic empire. Colbert's plan, which people started calling Colbertism, was built on a few core beliefs. First off, France needed to make its own stuff instead of buying from other countries. Second, and this is the really big one, France had to sell or export way more goods than it bought or imported. That way, more gold is always flowing in than is flowing out. So how did he actually do it? Colbert's first big strategy was to make the label Made in France mean you were getting the best of the best. He decided France wouldn't try to be the cheapest, it would aim to be the most luxurious. So he focused on turning the entire country into one giant workshop for high-end luxury goods. We're talking gorgeous silks, super detailed lace, massive tapestries, and flawless glass mirrors. All the stuff that wealthy people across Europe were dying to get their hands on. This was the bait to lure in all that foreign gold. Okay, but how do you guarantee everything is top quality? Well, he used these existing groups called guilds. Think of them as powerful clubs for craftsmen, like a guild for weavers, one for furniture makers, and so on. Colbert teamed up with these guilds to enforce his super strict government-mandated quality controls. And this process was no joke. The government laid down the law for everything. I mean everything, like the exact number of threads per inch of fabric. Then, inspectors would just show up at workshops to check. If you made a mistake, your product could be publicly destroyed and you'd get hit with a massive fine. It was incredibly harsh, but hey, it worked. Made in France quickly became a symbol of perfection. All right, so making amazing products was part one. Part two was all about controlling the flow of money at the borders. Colbert had to make sure France was absolutely winning the trade game. The thinking here is actually pretty simple. Exports? Good. That's when you sell your stuff to other countries, and their gold comes into France. Imports? Bad. That's when you buy foreign stuff, and your gold goes out to them. The whole goal was to keep that scale tipped way, way in France's favor. Colbert's secret weapon for this was the tariff. A tariff is just a special tax on imported goods. He slapped huge tariffs on things coming into France, which suddenly made them way more expensive than the French-made versions. So, of course, people bought French. The money stayed in France, and French businesses thrived. Of course, all this international trade was risky. You had pirates, you had rival countries who were not happy about this plan. So Colbert poured money into building a huge, powerful navy. Their job was basically to act as bodyguards for French merchant ships, making sure all that precious cargo and the gold made it home safe. But this whole economic machine needed a constant supply of fuel. And that's where the final piece of the puzzle falls into place: colonies. The plan was about to go global. This table breaks down exactly how the colonial system worked. It was a completely one-sided deal. The colonies, like New France up in North America, existed for one reason only: to make France rich. They supplied cheap raw materials like furs, sugar, and wood, which were shipped to France. Then, French workshops turned them into finished goods, like coats and tools, and sold them back to the colonies at a profit. And the kicker? The colonists were forced to buy only from France. It was a perfect loop designed to drain wealth from the colonies and pump it straight into the mother country. And to make this whole global system run like a well-oiled machine, Colbert also upgraded France itself. He invested a ton in what we call infrastructure, building better roads and funding incredible projects like the Canal de Midi, which was basically a man-made river connecting two seas. This made it so much faster and cheaper to move all those goods around. Now, Colbert's system was, in many ways, a huge success. But all of this power, all of this glory, it came at a serious cost. So let's take a look at who really benefited from all this and who paid the price. So on the one hand, yeah, France became the superpower of Europe. Its luxury goods were famous everywhere, and the king's treasury was definitely stronger. But all of this was built on the backs of ordinary people. The taxes on peasants and workers were absolutely crushing, and those strict rules sometimes choked out new ideas and innovation. This created a lot of anger that would just keep building over time. And here is the great irony in all of this. Even with Colbert working tirelessly to bring all this money in, King Louis XIV was spending it even faster. The constant wars, the non-stop, over-the-top construction at Versailles, it meant that no matter how much money came in, France's finances were always stretched to the absolute limit. Still, you can't deny Colbert's long-term impact. His intense focus on quality, luxury, and making made in France mean something special really stuck. It's honestly a huge reason why, even hundreds of years later, France is still the world capital for things like high fashion, fine wine, and amazing food. That legacy is real. And this whole story brings us to a really important question that people still argue about today. Colbert's France is a powerful example of what can happen when a government takes almost total control of an economy. You get the good and the bad. It really makes you think, what's the right balance? How much should a government get involved in business? It's a question we're still trying to answer all over the world.